I want to break down how a seemingly small change in a critical shipping route can potentially shift hundreds of millions, even billions of dollars in global trade. Until recently, roughly one-fifth of the world's oil supply moved from the Middle East to international markets through the Strait of Hormuz. That flow was disrupted after reported attacks involving the US and Israel, and since then, shipping patterns have begun to change. Over the past few weeks, vessels have increasingly been observed taking an alternative path, squeezing through a very narrow water corridor that is only a few kilometers wide. What makes this especially significant is that any ship using this route is operating deep within Iran's coastal waters. In practical terms, that means Iran holds the power to decide whether these vessels pass safely or not.
According to multiple reports, this control has led to a system where ships are being asked to pay for safe passage. In some cases, these payments have been described as tolls, with at least one reported instance reaching around $2 million per vessel. This raises a major question about how far this system could go and what kind of financial leverage it could create for Iran. Looking at verified industry reporting, Lloyd's List, a long-established maritime intelligence organization, recently noted that so-called zombie tankers have been using this adjusted route linked to Iranian-controlled waters. These are vessels that attempt to conceal their identity or origin while moving cargo. According to their findings, more than 20 ships have already taken this detour, and at least 2 are believed to have made payments for passage, including one fee estimated at around $2 million. There are also indications that Iranian authorities may be considering expanding this system. Reports suggest internal discussions about making such payments more formal or even permanent. Lawmakers are reportedly working on proposals that would place the strait under more official state-managed oversight. Pro-government media outlets have also defended the idea by comparing it to standard transit fees charged in other global trade routes, arguing that if goods pay to pass through canals and corridors elsewhere, similar logic should apply here. However, international maritime law does not support that interpretation. The Strait of Hormuz is considered a critical international passage, and under global legal frameworks, transit through such waterways is supposed to remain unobstructed. The principle of transit passage is meant to guarantee free and uninterrupted navigation. To understand the scale of what is being discussed, it helps to look at the numbers. In a typical year, between 30,000 and 50,000 tankers pass through this region. Even if we take the lower estimate and apply a hypothetical fee of $2 million per ship, the total would reach around $60 billion annually. That figure would represent a significant portion of Iran's entire economic output. Of course, this is not a simple or guaranteed system. In reality, enforcing a consistent toll structure would be extremely difficult. It would likely require broad international acceptance and cooperation, which is currently not in place. There is also a contradiction at the core of the situation. The same party expected to provide safe passage would also be the one capable of disrupting it, which naturally creates mistrust among shipping operators. Still, even without full compliance, there is a strong incentive for some vessels to consider payment. Large oil tankers moving through this route carry enormous value. Very large crude carriers can be around 330 meters long and transport close to 2 million barrels of oil, while ultra-large tankers can carry up to 3 million barrels. When calculated against global oil prices that have hovered around $100 per barrel, the cargo alone can be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. From that perspective, a $2 million payment begins to look relatively small, almost like a transaction fee of about $1 per barrel. On a fully loaded ship carrying oil worth hundreds of millions, paying that amount could be seen as a cost of doing business if it guarantees safe passage through a high-risk zone. However, the central issue remains legality. Under international maritime law, restricting or conditioning access to a transit strait is not permitted. The rules governing these waterways are based on the idea of free navigation. Even if no explicit toll ban is written in those exact words, any action that effectively blocks or endangers passage unless payment is made is generally considered a violation of that principle. If such a system were to develop further, it could also have broader geopolitical consequences. It may provide Iran with a new revenue stream while simultaneously offering a way to bypass certain sanctions or economic restrictions. It could also create strategic leverage, where access is selectively allowed or restricted depending on political alignment. There is also concern that this kind of mechanism could influence global shipping behavior. Some reports suggest vessels might be categorized based on ownership or affiliation, potentially allowing passage for neutral parties while restricting or targeting others. This introduces a risk of further fragmentation in global maritime security. Historically, the Strait of Hormuz has already been a sensitive pressure point in global energy security. Past incidents involving tanker disruptions in nearby waters demonstrated how quickly oil markets can react to regional instability. Even limited disruptions in this area have previously led to noticeable price shocks. More recently, there have been claims of increased instability, including reports of mined areas and heightened naval risk in the region. These developments have contributed to a situation where global shipping faces uncertainty, with some routes becoming slower, more expensive, and more politically sensitive. At the same time, the broader geopolitical narrative remains tense. Some analysts argue that military pressure on Iran has weakened certain capabilities, including air defense and command structures. However, despite this pressure, Iran is still viewed as retaining strategic leverage, particularly through control of key maritime chokepoints. This is why the Strait of Hormuz remains such a critical focus. Even if military or political pressure increases elsewhere, control over a narrow but essential shipping corridor gives significant influence over global energy flows. As long as major oil shipments depend on this passage, any form of control, formal or informal, carries global consequences. In the end, what is unfolding is not just a question of shipping logistics, but of geopolitical leverage, international law, and economic pressure intersecting in one of the world's most important energy corridors.